I'm Lieutenant Call Ardenholt, 39 years old, and I built my career from nothing but long nights, discipline, and a stubborn need to prove I belonged in the cockpit. For years, I put the mission first, sacrificing sleep, relationships, and any sense of a normal life to keep teams on the ground alive. But the day a SEAL captain mocked me in front of his entire unit, insisting women don't fly combat, after everything I'd given to this job, that was the moment I drew a line. And it changed everything. Have you ever been dismissed or humiliated by someone you showed nothing but loyalty to? If you have, tell me your story in the comments. You're not the only one. Before I get into what happened, let me know where you're listening from. And if you've ever had to stand up for yourself after someone crossed a line, tap like and hit subscribe. What happened next might surprise you. I arrive at Forward Operating Base Sentinel at 0630, boots hitting tarmac under a sky still heavy with pre-dawn haze. The air smells like jet fuel and dust. My Air Force detachment came in overnight for what the brief called a time-sensitive joint operation, the kind of phrasing that means someone's life is on a countdown clock. I've done enough of these missions to know the rhythm. Fast intel, faster decisions, and ground teams who don't always appreciate that their exfil depends on people they've never met. The Joint Operations Center is already crackling with energy when I walk in. Navy SEALs cluster near the far wall, their desert fatigues darker than ours, weapons staged and ready. They've got that pre-mission tension, the kind that makes small talk impossible and every glance sharp. I recognize the look. I've seen it on the faces of men I've pulled out of mountains, deserts, and situations that never made it into official reports. Captain Mason Rourke stands at the center table, arms crossed, a Navy 06 with the bearing of someone who's used to being the loudest voice in the room. He's mid-40s, square-jawed, with the kind of confidence that comes from leading teams into places most people only see in classified files. His XO, Lieutenant Evan Sharp, hovers nearby with a tablet, nodding at whatever Rourke's saying. Neither looks up when I enter. I take my position at the table with Major Kira Lawton, our intel officer, who's already spreading satellite imagery across the display. She catches my eye and gives me the slightest nod, the kind that says, "Buckle up." The briefing starts without ceremony. A hostage situation. American contractor. Remote compound. 18-hour window before the situation evolves, military speak forgets worse. Rourke dominates the briefing, his voice cutting across the room as he outlines ingress routes and target structures. He addresses every male officer by rank and name. When Major Lawton offers an update on enemy positions, he nods without looking at her. When I point out a timing conflict between their insertion and our air corridor clearance, he redirects the question to Lieutenant Sharp. "Lieutenant, can you coordinate with them on that?" Them. Not me. Not the Air Force detachment. Them. I let it go. Mission first. Always. But I notice. I always notice. Over the next 6 hours, we cycle through rehearsals and contingency plans. The timeline keeps shifting, intel updates, weather changes, clearance delays. Rourke gets testier with each change. He snaps at his own people. He ignores suggestions from anyone not wearing Navy fatigues. And he treats my detachment like we're a necessary inconvenience. During one planning session, he questions our reliability. Not our specific capabilities. Just reliability. As if 2 decades of Air Force combat aviation is somehow unproven. "We need guarantees," he says, not looking at me. "We can't afford soft support when lives are on the line." Soft support. Like we're administrative staff and not the people who'll be flying through hostile airspace to get his team home. Major Lawton stiffens beside me. I put a hand on her arm, subtle, steadying. "Not here. Not yet." Later, I overhear him talking to Chief Petty Officer Bram Keller near the coffee station. Rourke's voice carries more than he probably intends. "We don't need any desk officers slowing us down. Half these people have never been under real fire." Keller says something I can't hear. Rourke shrugs. "It's a joint op politics. We play nice, but we don't let them run the show." I pour my coffee slowly, deliberately. Let him think I didn't hear. Let him think I don't care. But I do care. Not because of ego. Because dismissal breeds mistakes. And mistakes get people killed. By 1900 hours, the TOC is thick with exhaustion and unspoken tension. Rourke's been avoiding direct interaction with me for hours. When mission parameters require my input, he funnels questions through Sharp or Keller. When I speak, he looks at his notes. When I move, he shifts his attention elsewhere. It's deliberate. And everyone feels it. Sergeant Tully Moreno, one of my aviation techs, pulls me aside during a break. "Ma'am, is it just me or is Captain Rourke?" "Old school," I finish for her. It's the phrase I've heard 3 times today. Code for doesn't think women belong here. She nods, frustrated. "Does he know who you? Doesn't matter," I say. "We do the job. That's it." But it does matter. Not for me. For every woman who came before me and everyone who'll come after. For every time someone assumed competence was conditional on gender. For every moment like this one, where professionalism gets undermined by bias so ingrained the person wielding it doesn't even see it. At 2100 hours, Commander Jonas Reed, the SOCOM liaison, briefs us on updated threat assessments. The hostage's condition is deteriorating. The window's shrinking. The mission's moving from high risk to critical. Rourke leans forward, gripping the edge of the table. We go at first light. No delays. No complications. Reed nods. You'll have full air support. Colonel Holt's detachment will handle ingress and exfil. It's the first time anyone's used my rank and name in Rourke's presence all day. He blinks, as if surprised I'm still here. As if I'm an afterthought that just became inconveniently relevant. Understood, he says flatly. The briefing ends. People scatter to prep. I stay behind, reviewing flight corridors with Lawton and Moreno. The TOC quiets. Rourke lingers near the exit, talking low with Keller. I catch fragments. Don't trust it. Not about trust, sir. It's about capability. We'll see. I close my folder. Look up. Rourke's watching me now, not directly, but in that sidelong way people do when they think they're being subtle. There's something in his expression. Not hostility. Not quite. More like doubt. Like he's already decided I'll fail, and he's just waiting for confirmation. I hold his gaze for 1 second. 2. He looks away first. I leave the TOC and walk back to my quarters under a sky finally clearing of haze. The base hums with pre-mission energy, engines warming, radios crackling, voices tight with focus. I've been here before. I'll be here again. But something about tonight feels different. Something's building. A pressure point. A moment where the unspoken becomes unavoidable. I don't know when it'll hit. But I know it's coming. And I know I'll be ready. The call comes at 04:15. I'm already awake, dressed, reviewing flight data when Moreno bursts into my quarters, breathless. "Ma'am," they move the window. "Insertions at 0600. They need someone in the TOC now." I'm moving before she finishes. Boots laced, gear secured, headset clipped. The hallways are chaos, people running, shouting, the kind of controlled panic that happens when timelines collapse. I hit the TOC at 0422 and walk straight into a storm. Captain Rourke is standing in the center of the room, face red, voice loud enough to rattle the walls. I need a combat pilot with classified clearance now. We've got a 12-minute window for corridor approval and no one's giving me answers. Officers scramble. Radios squawk. Sharp's on a headset, talking fast. Keller's pulling up maps. Everyone's moving except Rourke, who's standing there like a thunderstorm looking for a target. I step forward. Calm. Steady. Exactly the way I've stepped forward 1,000 times before. Lieutenant Colonel Holt. Air Force. I have the clearance. The room doesn't just go quiet. It goes silent. The kind of silence where even breathing feels loud. Rourke turns. Looks at me. And laughs. It's not a chuckle. It's a full, loud, performative laugh, the kind meant to humiliate. You. He shakes his head, smirking. You've got to be kidding me. I don't move. Don't react. Just stand there, waiting. He steps closer, arms crossed, voice dripping with condescension. Women don't fly combat, sweetheart. This isn't a training exercise. This is real. Sit down before you embarrass yourself. The room is frozen. Sharp staring at his boots. Keller's jaw is tight. Major Lawton looks like she's about to intervene, but I catch her eye and give the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. Rourke's still talking, enjoying himself now. You ever even been under fire, ma'am? The way he says ma'am makes it sound like an insult. You ever pulled a team out of a hot zone? Or do you just fly desk routes and call it service? I let him finish. Let him have his moment. Let him think he's won. Then I speak. Quiet. Even. Unshakable. You need a pilot with Tier 1 clearance for restricted corridors. I'm the only one in this room without authority. He scoffs. I need someone who can actually do the job. Then you need me. His smirk falters. Just slightly. He looks around the room, as if expecting someone to back him up. No one does. Even his own people are looking away. He turns back to me, voice sharp. Fine. Call sign. Let's hear it. He thinks he's got me. Thinks I'll say something generic, something forgettable. Thinks this is where I fold. I hold his gaze. Let the moment stretch. Then I answer. Valkyrie 0. The effect is immediate. His face goes pale, not pink, not flushed. Pale. Like someone just pulled the ground out from under him. Behind him, 2 of his seals straighten. One whispers, holy hell. Chief Keller's eyes widen. He knows. He was there. Rourke's staring at me like he's seeing me for the first time. Like every assumption he made just shattered. Because Valkyrie 0 isn't just a call sign. It's a legend. The pilot who flew into a zero visibility mountain extraction 2 years ago when everyone else said it was impossible. The pilot who pulled 8 men out of a collapsing LZ under enemy fire. The pilot who stayed on station for 40 minutes past bingo fuel because leaving meant leaving people behind. Rourke's men. His operation. His failure to lead from the front. And he had no idea that pilot was a woman. Had no idea she outranked half his chain under classified tasking authority. Had no idea she was standing in front of him. Now he does. His mouth opens. Closes. He looks at Keller, who nods slowly, confirming what Rourke can't quite process. The room is still silent. But the energy shifted. It's not shock anymore. It's recognition. Rourke tries to recover. Clears his throat. Straightens. I didn't realize. You didn't ask, I say. Not cruel. Not gloating. Just factual. He has no response. No comeback. No smirk. Commander Reed steps forward, voice cutting through the tension. Colonel Holt will coordinate all aviation assets. Captain Rourke, brief your team. We launch in 90 minutes. Rourke nods stiffly. Turns. Walks away without another word. I move to the display, pulling up flight corridors. Major Lawton joins me, her voice low. That was necessary, I finish. She nods. Doesn't argue. The room slowly comes back to life. People return to work. Radios crackle. The mission moves forward. But something's changed. I can feel it in the way people look at me now. Not with surprise. With respect. Earned. Not given. The way it should be. I was 23 when I commissioned as a second lieutenant. Fresh out of the academy, sharp-edged and hungry to prove that the uniform I wore wasn't a costume. My father had been Air Force. So had my grandfather. Flying wasn't just a career choice, it was legacy, expectation, and the only future I'd ever wanted. Pilot training nearly broke me. Not because of the flying. I loved the flying. It was everything else. The instructors who called on me last. The classmates who assumed I'd wash out. The quiet, constant hum of doubt that followed me into every briefing, every sim, every flight. I graduated top of my class anyway. Not to prove them wrong. To prove myself right. By 27, I was a captain, volunteering for missions no one else wanted. Search and rescue. High-risk exfil. The jobs where one mistake meant body bags. I didn't do it for glory. I did it because someone had to and I knew I could. The Spec Ops community doesn't hand out trust. You earn it mission by mission, extraction by extraction. I spent years flying into places that didn't exist on maps, pulling out teams who couldn't acknowledge I'd been there. I became a name without a face. A call sign without context. Valkyrie 0. It started as a joke. A female pilot with a Norse mythology reference. But after the mountain extraction, it became something else. It became proof. That mission, 2 years ago, high-altitude strike gone wrong, still sits in my chest like a stone. The SEAL team had been compromised. Extraction window closed. Weather deteriorated. Command called it a loss and ordered everyone to pull back. I didn't pull back. I flew into a canyon with 50-foot visibility, enemy fire lighting up the darkness, and landed on a slope that wasn't meant for landing. The team was pinned, half of them wounded, all of them out of options. I got them out. All 8. With rounds punching through the fuselage and fuel gauges screaming red, I got them out. Captain Rourke's men. His operation. His command. He wasn't there. He was 30 miles away in a command post, coordinating from safety while his people bled. I never held it against him. Command isn't always frontline. Someone has to run the big picture. But he never knew who saved his men. Never cared to find out. Just filed the report, took the credit, and moved on. Until today. By 33, I made major. By 39, lieutenant colonel. One of the youngest in my wing. Not because of politics or shortcuts. Because I showed up, stayed calm, and delivered when others couldn't. My career was built on competence. On consistency. On the ability to stay steady when everything around me fell apart. That's why Rourke's dismissal stung. Not because he insulted me. Because he erased me. Reduced 2 decades of service, sacrifice, and classified work to a gender-based assumption. I've faced versions of this my entire career. The instructors who doubted. The commanders who overlooked. The quiet, persistent message that I had to be twice as good to be seen as half as capable. But I kept flying. Kept proving. Kept earning respect mission by mission. And now, standing in this TOC with Rourke's humiliation still hanging in the air, I realize something. I didn't break his assumptions for me. I broke them for every woman who came before me. For everyone who will come after. For every person who's been dismissed, overlooked, or reduced to someone else's bias. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. And the mission always comes first. The next 6 hours pass in focused silence. Rourke avoids me. Not dramatically. Just deliberately. He coordinates with his team, briefs his operators, reviews contingencies. But he doesn't look my way. Doesn't ask questions. Doesn't engage. I don't need him to. I update flight paths with Moreno, coordinate air assets with Major Lawton, and brief the SEAL operators who will be relying on my timing. They treat me differently now. Not with awe. With recognition. The kind that comes from shared understanding. They know what Valkyrie Zero means. They know what that mountain extraction cost. One of them, a quiet operator with a scarred jawline, approaches me near the coffee station. Ma'am, I was on that bird. 2 years ago. You stayed past bingo. You shouldn't have. But you did. I nod. You're welcome. He hesitates. Captain Rourke, he doesn't know what he's got in you. He does now. The operator smiles faintly. Yes, ma'am. He walks away. I pour my coffee. The room hums with pre-mission energy, but it's different now. The friction is gone. The doubt has shifted. People know who I am. What I can do. And that's all I've ever asked for. At 1100 hours, I replay Rourke's words in my head. Just once. Not to dwell. To process. Women don't fly combat. It's not the first time I've heard it. Won't be the last. But this time, it wasn't just bias. It was operational risk. His refusal to see me, to acknowledge my role, could have delayed the mission. Could have cost lives. That's the part that matters. I think about all the times I let it slide. The dismissive comments. The overlooked contributions. The quiet assumption that I was less capable, less reliable, less real than my male counterparts. I let it slide because the mission came first. Because rocking the boat felt selfish. Because I thought professionalism meant absorbing the hit and moving forward. But this was different. This wasn't just about me. It was about the standard. The expectation that competence matters more than assumptions. That rank and record speak louder than gender. If I let this pass, it sets a precedent. It tells every woman after me that being dismissed is acceptable. That silence is the price of acceptance. I won't pay that price. Not anymore. At 1300 hours, the mission clock ticks down. Focus comes back easily. It always does. The doubts, the insults, the humiliation, they fade into background noise when lives are on the line. I review the final flight plan with Commander Reed. He's thorough, precise, asking the right questions. He doesn't treat me differently. Doesn't coddle or doubt. Just respects the expertise. Tight window, he says, studying the map. You'll have 8 minutes from insertion to wheels up. I've done tighter. He nods. I know. That's why you're here. Rourke enters the TOC, avoiding my side of the room. He briefs his team near the far wall. His voice is steady, professional. But there's a tension in his shoulders. A stiffness that wasn't there before. He's rattled. And he should be. At 1500 hours, Major Lawton pulls me aside. You filing a report? I pause. I hadn't decided yet. Part of me wants to let it go. Move forward. Prove competence through action, not paperwork. But another part, the part that's watched too many women swallow insults for the sake of peace, knows better. Yes. She nods, unsurprised. Good. I don't elaborate. She doesn't ask. We understand each other. The decision settles in my chest, firm and clear. This isn't about punishment. It's about accountability. About drawing a line that says this is unacceptable. Not for my ego. For the mission. For the standard. Because bias doesn't just hurt feelings. It compromises operations. It creates gaps in trust, delays in communication, breakdowns in cohesion. And in our world, that gets people killed. At 1700 hours, I sit down and write the memorandum. It's precise, factual, devoid of emotion. I document the incident exactly as it happened. No commentary. No embellishment. Just professional reporting of a breakdown in operational discipline. I send it to Colonel Dana Ridge, the Joint Task Force Deputy Commander. Then I return to mission prep. The rest will happen on its own. At 1900 hours, Captain Rourke is summoned to Colonel Ridge's office. I hear about it through Sergeant Moreno, who heard it from someone in admin. Apparently, the shouting was audible through the thin walls. Rourke's voice, loud and defensive. Ridge's voice, calm and unyielding. I don't listen for details. Don't ask for updates. I stay focused on final flight checks, equipment staging, and contingency planning. At 20:30 hours, Rourke tries to corner me outside the TOC. He approaches slowly, hands in pockets, trying to look casual. Failing. Colonel Holt. I stop. Turn. Wait. He hesitates, as if choosing his words carefully. You didn't have to do that. Do what? File the report. I meet his eyes. Keep my voice even. I did what the mission required. He shifts his weight, uncomfortable. I made a mistake. I admit that. But going to Ridge, you made me look bad. No, I say. You did that yourself. His jaw tightens. He tries a different angle. This could ruin my record. One bad report and 20 years of service gets questioned. You question my 20 years in front of an entire room. He flinches. Looks away. That was different. How? He doesn't answer. Can't answer. Because there's no defense. No justification. Just the uncomfortable truth that he dismissed me without knowing who I was, what I'd done, or what I was capable of. He tries again, softer this time. Look, I know I came off rough. But you have to understand, this job, this world, it's changing fast. Some of us are still adjusting. You've had 2 decades to adjust. That's not fair. Neither was your assumption that I couldn't do my job. Silence. Long and heavy. He exhales, running a hand through his hair. I'm not a bad guy. I respect what you've done. I do. I just didn't know. That's the problem, I say. You should have. He nods slowly. Defeated. Then he tries one more time. Can you pull the report? We can move past this. No harm, no foul. I almost laugh. Almost. But it's not funny. No harm. I repeat. Captain, you delayed mission coordination because you refused to acknowledge my clearance. You undermined operational cohesion because of a personal bias. That's not no harm. That's risk. I wouldn't have, you did. He goes quiet, stares at the ground. I soften my voice slightly, not to comfort him, to make sure he hears me. This isn't personal. It's professional. You created a gap in the command structure. I reported it. That's how accountability works. He looks up, searching my face for something sympathy maybe. Understanding. He doesn't find it. Understood, he says finally, voice tight. He turns and walks away. Shoulders hunched. Defeated. I watch him go, feeling no satisfaction. No triumph. Just a quiet certainty that I did the right thing. At 0200 hours, Colonel Ridge pulls me aside before final mission brief. Your report was thorough, she says. And necessary. I nod. Thank you, ma'am. Captain Rourke is being reassigned for this phase. You'll coordinate directly with Chief Keller and Commander Reed for tactical air support. It's not punishment. It's risk mitigation. A recognition that Rourke's behavior created a gap, and gaps get people killed. Ridge studies me for a moment. You handled this well. A lot of officers would have let it slide. A lot of officers aren't responsible for getting people home alive. She almost smiles. True. The brief ends. I return to my team. The mission moves forward. And Captain Rourke watches from the sidelines, stripped of control, forced to confront the gap between his pride and my performance. The mission launches at 0545. Perfect timing. Clear skies. Optimal visibility. I pilot the lead aircraft, coordinating a three-bird formation through the ingress corridor. The route's tight, mountain passes, narrow windows, zero margin for error. But I've flown tighter. I've flown worse. The SEAL team inserts at 0612. Smooth. Clean. Chief Keller's voice crackles over comms. Valkyrie 0, package delivered. Standing by. Copy. On station. I hold position 3 clicks out, monitoring enemy movement on thermals. Major Lawton feeds me real-time intel updates from the TOC. Commander Reed coordinates fire support. The operation runs like clockwork. At 0647, the call comes. Valkyrie 0, package secured. Request immediate exfil. Hot LZ. Repeat, hot LZ. Copy. Inbound. I bank hard, dropping altitude fast. Marino's in the right seat, managing systems. The LZ lights up with small arms fire, tracers cutting through dawn light, sharp and bright. They're taking fire, Moreno says, voice tight. I see it. I push the approach. Fast. Aggressive. The kind of landing that looks reckless but isn't. It's calculated. Controlled. The result of 10,000 hours and muscle memory that doesn't hesitate. Wheels touch. SEALs sprint aboard, dragging the hostage alive, conscious, terrified. Chief Keller's the last one in. Go, go, go. I'm already lifting. Rounds punch through the fuselage, metal screaming, alarms wailing. I ignore them. Focus on airspeed, altitude, angle. Getting us out. We clear the LZ at 0653. 8 minutes from insertion to wheels up. Keller's voice comes over comms, breathless but steady. Valkyrie 0, that was hell of a piece of flying. Just doing my job, Chief. No, ma'am. That was more than the job. I don't respond. Don't need to. The mission speaks for itself. We land back at Sentinel at 0728. The hostage is transferred to medical. The SEAL team debriefs. I shut down systems, run post-flight checks, and file the after-action report. Captain Rourke is standing near the hangar when I climb out. He's not in his gear. Didn't fly. Didn't lead. Just watched from the TOC while his team executed flawlessly under someone else's coordination. He meets my eyes. Nods once. I nod back. No words. No reconciliation. Just acknowledgement. At 1300 hours, the after-action report hits my inbox. It highlights exceptional airmanship and leadership by my detachment. SOCOM sends a classified commendation. Commander Reed personally thanks me in front of the Joint Task Force. Rourke's name appears once, listed as Detachment Command, with no operational role specified. It's not punishment. It's just reality. The mission succeeded because the right people were in the right positions. And sometimes, that means stepping aside. My career stabilizes with a new sense of authority. Not granted. Earned. And Captain Rourke's begins to fray. Not ruined. Just quietly sidelined. The way it should be. 3 days later, Captain Rourke approaches me in the TOC. The room's quieter now, post-mission energy fading into routine. He looks different, less rigid, less defensive. Almost contrite. Colonel Holt. Can I have a minute? I glance up from my reports. Go ahead. He shifts his weight, uncomfortable. This isn't a man used to apologizing. We started off wrong, he says carefully. I didn't know who you were. That was the problem. He nods slowly, absorbing the correction. You're right. I should have asked. Should have done my homework. I wait. Let him finish. Your record's impressive. Really impressive. What you did 2 years ago, that extraction, I had no idea that was you. Would it have mattered? He pauses. Considers. It should have. But it didn't. Another pause. Longer this time. He knows where this is going. No, he admits. It didn't. I close my folder. Look at him directly. Captain, respect that requires discovery isn't real respect. You dismissed me before you knew my record, my clearance, my call sign. That's the issue. He exhales, frustrated but not defensive. I get that. I do. This job, this world, it's not what it was when I came in. And I'm still catching up. You've had 2 decades. I know. Silence settles between us. Not hostile. Just unresolved. He tries again, more genuine this time. I admire what you've done. The mountain extraction, this mission, you're one of the best pilots I've worked with. Thank you. And I'm sorry. For how I treated you. For what I said. I nod. Acknowledge it. But I don't absolve him. I appreciate that. He lingers, as if expecting more. Validation, maybe. Forgiveness. I don't provide it. He shifts, realizing the conversation's over. Right. Well, just wanted to say that. Understood. He leaves. I return to my work. Over the next week, I see him around the base. He hovers at the edges of rooms. Sits in the back during briefings. He's not hostile. Not bitter. Just diminished. Like someone who realized too late that his assumptions cost him more than he expected. He wants validation. Wants me to tell him it's okay, that we're past it, that he's a good guy who made a mistake. But I don't owe him that. Don't owe him comfort. I keep things professional. Distant. Neutral. The boundary holds. At one briefing, he tries to contribute an idea. It's solid, tactical, well-considered. Commander Reed acknowledges it. The room moves on. Rourke glances my way, as if seeking approval. I don't react. Don't nod. Don't smile. Because this isn't about punishment. It's about boundaries. About the reality that trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. And I'm not in the business of fast-tracking that process. By the end of the deployment, Rourke fades into the background. Still competent. Still professional. But no longer commanding the room. No longer the loudest voice. He's learning. Slowly. Painfully. But he's learning. And that, I suppose, is progress. The deployment ends on a clear morning in late spring. I fly back to Nellis with my detachment, the Nevada desert stretching out beneath us in endless browns and golds. The mission's over. The reports are filed. The commendations are logged. And life returns to its steady rhythm. I settle back into my wing, resuming regular duties, training flights, operational planning, mentoring junior officers. The mission becomes a quiet reference point in classified circles. The SEAL captain who underestimated the wrong pilot. The call sign that carries weight. I don't celebrate Rourke's downfall. Don't dwell on the insult. Don't replay the moment he laughed and called me sweetheart. I simply carry the knowledge that competence speaks louder than bias. Always has. Always will. 3 months after the deployment, I'm in my office when Major Lawton stops by with news. Rourke transferred stateside. Desk roll. Training command. I glance up from my paperwork. Voluntary. Does it matter? Not really. She smiles faintly. He asked about you. Wanted to know if you'd be at the next joint briefing. What did you tell him? That you're busy flying missions he'll never clear for. I almost smile. Almost. Thanks, Kira. She leaves. I return to work. That evening, I mentor a young second lieutenant, Captain Sarah Voss, 24, fresh out of pilot training and hungry to prove herself. She reminds me of myself at that age. Sharp. Driven. Tired of being underestimated. Ma'am, she says hesitantly. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. How do you deal with people who don't think you belong? I lean back in my chair, considering the question. You don't deal with them, I say finally. You outlast them. You outfly them. You outperform them. And you stay steady when they expect you to break. She nods slowly, absorbing it. Does it get easier? No, I admit. But you get stronger. She smiles, small, determined. Thank you, ma'am. Anytime. She leaves. I stay. And I think about Captain Rourke, wherever he is now. I hope he learns something. I hope he's better. I hope the next woman he encounters doesn't have to prove herself twice just to be seen once. But if she does, if she faces the same dismissal, the same assumptions, the same quiet erasure, I hope she remembers what I learned. We don't earn respect by demanding it. We earn it by showing up. By staying steady when they don't expect us to. By flying the mission even when they doubt we can. And when the moment comes, when someone tries to reduce us to assumptions, we remind them, calmly and clearly, who we are. Not with anger. Not with theatrics. With competence. With consistency. With the quiet, unshakable truth that we belong here. That we've always belonged here. And that no amount of dismissal can erase what we've already proven. Valkyrie 0. Call sign earned. Legacy secured. And the mission always, always comes first. 10 years changes everything and nothing. I'm 49 now, a full colonel, 06, with Silver Eagles on my shoulders and 2 decades of joint operations behind me. My office at the Pentagon overlooks the Potomac, though I spend more time in classified briefing rooms than admiring the view. I've traded cockpit hours for strategic planning, tactical coordination for policy development. I still fly when I can, proficiency flights, training exercises, the occasional high-level transport, but my primary role now is shaping the future of Air Force Special Operations integration. The uniform still fits. The mission still matters. But the battlefield looks different from this altitude. It's a Tuesday in October when I get the email. Subject line, Joint Special Operations Command, Advisory Board nomination. I open it expecting routine correspondence, another committee, another working group, another opportunity to sit in conference rooms and debate doctrine. Instead, I find my name listed alongside 15 other senior officers nominated to serve on SOC's newly formed Gender Integration and Operational Effectiveness Advisory Board. The mission: assess 10 years of combat integration data, identify remaining barriers, and provide recommendations for next-generation special operations force structure. The list includes names I know, respect. Some I've served with. Others I've only heard about through the quiet network of women who've fought their way through institutional resistance to reach senior leadership. And at the bottom, in smaller font, the list of military advisors who'll be providing operational context. Captain Mason Rourke, Ret. USN. I stare at the name for a long moment. He retired 6 years ago at 06 after a career that ended not with a bang, but with a slow fade into administrative obscurity. I heard through channels that he'd taken a contractor position, training, consulting, something safely removed from operational command. I haven't thought about him in years. Haven't needed to. But apparently, JSOC thinks his perspective is valuable for this particular assessment. I close the email. Pour myself coffee. Consider declining the nomination. Then I remember Second Lieutenant Sarah Voss, now Captain Voss, flying combat missions in the Pacific. I remember Major Lawton, recently promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, leading intelligence operations I'm not cleared to discuss. I remember Sergeant Moreno, now a Chief Master Sergeant, mentoring the next generation of aviation technicians. I remember every woman who came before me and everyone who will come after. I accept the nomination. The first board meeting convenes 3 weeks later at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, home of Special Operations Command. The conference room is sleek, modern, climate-controlled to the point of being cold. 16 senior officers, 10 women, 6 men, representing Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. Experience ranging from combat aviation to ground operations to intelligence to logistics. We're the generation that integrated, that fought, that proved it could be done. Now we're being asked to evaluate whether it worked. The morning session focuses on data, retention rates, performance metrics, injury statistics, disciplinary actions. The numbers tell a story of slow, steady progress punctuated by persistent gaps. Women are serving, succeeding, leading, but still underrepresented in certain specialties, still facing higher attrition rates in some training pipelines, still navigating cultural barriers that statistics can only hint at. Lunch is served in an adjacent room. I'm discussing recruitment challenges with an Army colonel when I see him. Mason Rourke looks older. His hair's more gray than brown, his face carrying lines that weren't there a decade ago. He's dressed in business casual khakis, polo shirt, contractor badge clipped to his belt. He's talking with 2 Navy officers, gesturing as he makes some point about training protocols. He glances up, sees me, freezes mid-sentence. I nod once, professional acknowledgement, nothing more, and return to my conversation. When I look back, he's gone. The afternoon session brings in the advisors. Rourke sits 3 chairs down from me, carefully avoiding eye contact. The session lead, a 2-star Army general named Patricia Kern, introduces the format. Advisors will share operational experiences, board members will ask clarifying questions, and will synthesize findings into preliminary recommendations. The first advisor is a former Green Beret, now teaching at the War College. He talks about cultural shift in Army Special Forces, the initial resistance, the gradual acceptance, the current state where gender is increasingly irrelevant compared to capability. The second is a retired Air Force pararescueman who trained the first female PJs. He's blunt, data-driven, unapologetic about both the challenges and the successes. Then it's Rourke's turn. He stands, clears his throat, and begins. His voice is steady but lacks the commanding presence I remember. He talks about SEAL training evolution, integration challenges, the importance of maintaining standards while eliminating bias. He's careful, measured, hitting all the right talking points. But there's something missing, something hollow. Halfway through his presentation, General Kern interrupts. Captain Rourke, your file indicates you had, let's call it a mixed record on integration issues during your active duty career. Can you speak to how your perspective has evolved? The room goes quiet. Rourke's face flushes slightly. Yes, ma'am. I can. He pauses, gathering himself. Early in my career, I held certain assumptions about combat roles and gender. Those assumptions were based on limited experience and, frankly, on biases I didn't recognize I had. He's rehearsed this. But there's something genuine underneath. Over time, through both positive and negative experiences, I came to understand that those assumptions were wrong. Not just politically incorrect, operationally wrong. I witnessed female pilots, ED techs, and other specialists perform at levels that contradicted everything I thought I knew. He glances briefly in my direction. I keep my expression neutral. My role now is partly corrective. I work with commands to identify and eliminate the kind of thinking I once represented, to help senior leaders avoid the mistakes I made. General Kern nods. And what was the catalyst for that shift? Rourke hesitates. This part isn't rehearsed. A mission in 2015. Joint operation. I publicly dismissed a senior Air Force officer based on gender assumptions. She was not only more qualified than I'd assumed, she was the pilot who'd previously saved men under my command. I didn't know because I'd never asked. Never cared to find out. The room is very quiet now. Several board members glance at me. I remain still. That officer filed a formal report. I was reassigned. My career trajectory changed. And I was angry about it for a long time. He pauses. But she was right. My bias created operational risk. It undermined unit cohesion. And if I'd been in command during a critical phase, people could have died because I refused to acknowledge her expertise. General Kern leans forward. That officer. Is she here? Rourke nods slowly. Yes, ma'am. Every eye in the room turns to me. I meet Rourke's gaze. Hold it. Say nothing. General Kern looks at me. Colonel Holt. Would you like to add anything? I consider. The room waits. Captain Rourke's account is accurate, I say finally. The incident he described occurred during a hostage recovery operation. His assumptions delayed coordination and created unnecessary risk. I reported it because the mission required it. And his characterization of his evolution? I can't speak to his internal journey. I can only speak to his behavior at the time, which was unprofessional and potentially dangerous. Kern nods. Fair enough. She turns back to Rourke. Captain, thank you for your candor. You may sit. He sits. The presentation continues. But something's shifted in the room. Something unspoken but understood. The sessions run for 3 days. We break into working groups, review case studies, debate policy recommendations. Rourke participates when asked, but doesn't dominate. He's deferential in a way that feels both genuine and slightly performative, like someone who's overcorrected but isn't quite sure where the balance is. On the second evening, there's a reception. Informal networking, off-the-record conversations, the kind of social obligation that comes with senior leadership. I'm discussing retention strategies with a Marine colonel when Rourke approaches. Colonel Holt. May I have a word? The Marine colonel excuses herself tactfully. Rourke and I move to a quieter corner of the room. I wasn't sure you'd be here, he starts. I wasn't sure you would either. He nods, accepts that. I meant what I said today. About the evolution. About being wrong. I know. Do you believe me? I consider the question carefully. I believe you believe it. He frowns slightly. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Silence stretches between us. Not hostile. Just complicated. I've spent 10 years trying to make up for that moment, he says quietly. For what I said. How I acted. I've worked with 3 different SEAL teams on integration training. I've mentored female officers. I've called out the exact behavior I used to exhibit. That's good. But you don't forgive me. I meet his eyes. Captain, this isn't about forgiveness. It never was. It was about accountability. You were held accountable. You're doing better work now. That's how it should work. But personally, I interrupt gently. I don't think about you much. That probably sounds harsh. But it's true. You were a moment in my career. An important one, yes. But a moment. I moved on. He absorbs this. I can see him processing, adjusting expectations. I guess I thought, after all this time, maybe we could. Could what? Be friends? I shake my head. We're professional colleagues. That's appropriate. That's enough. He nods slowly. You're right. Of course you're right. He pauses. For what it's worth, you were the best pilot I ever worked with. And I should have known that from the start. Yes, you should have. No softening. No consolation. Just truth. He extends his hand. Thank you for your service, Colonel. I shake it. Firm. Brief. Thank you for yours. He walks away. I return to the reception. And I realize, standing there with a glass of wine I haven't touched, that I feel nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No lingering resentment. Just the quiet certainty that justice doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like boundaries. Like progress without pretense. Like moving forward without looking back. The board's final session focuses on recommendations. We've synthesized 3 days of data, testimony, and debate into actionable policy proposals. The conversation is sharp, professional, occasionally contentious. These are senior officers who fought their own battles, earned their own scars, and aren't interested in symbolic gestures. We want structural change. Real change. General Kern facilitates with precision. Let's address the elephant in the room, cultural resistance. We can change policy all we want, but if commanders on the ground don't buy in, nothing moves. An Army colonel speaks up. The data shows resistance correlates with generation and exposure. Officers who've worked with integrated units show significantly less bias than those who haven't. Which suggests, I add, that the solution isn't just policy. It's assignment. We need to ensure senior leaders have direct operational experience with integrated teams before they reach command positions. A Navy captain counters. That's a long timeline. We're talking generational change. All sustainable change is generational, I reply. But we can accelerate it. Mandatory integrated assignments for O4 and above. Performance evaluations that specifically assess inclusive leadership. Promotion boards that prioritize commanders with proven track records. The room debates. Refines. Builds consensus. Rourke, sitting in the advisor section, raises his hand hesitantly. General Kern nods. Ma'am, if I may, from the contractor perspective, we're seeing demand for integration training spike. Commands want it. They know it's necessary. But the training often focuses on compliance rather than capability. We're teaching people what to say, not why it matters. Suggestions. Kern asks. Make it operational. Don't frame it as sensitivity training. Frame it as mission effectiveness. Show commanders how bias creates gaps. How assumptions delay coordination. How dismissal undermines unit cohesion. He pauses. Make it about risk, not rights. I nod slowly. It's a good point. Frustrating that it's a good point, but good nonetheless. Agreed, I say. Integration isn't a social program. It's an operational imperative. Frame it that way, and resistance drops. The board incorporates the feedback. We draft language emphasizing mission effectiveness, operational readiness, and strategic advantage. We avoid rhetoric about fairness or equality, not because those things don't matter, but because commanders respond to operational logic. We're speaking their language. Because we are them. By the end of the session, we've produced a preliminary report. 37 recommendations spanning recruitment, training, assignment, evaluation, and command selection. It's comprehensive. It's ambitious. It's achievable. General Kern closes the session with characteristic directness. This goes to the Joint Chiefs next month. They'll get half of it. Dilute another quarter. But what survives will matter. And what survives is because of the work you've done here. She looks around the room. You're the generation that integrated. Your legacy is ensuring the next generation doesn't have to fight the same battles. The room rises. Applause not performative, but genuine. Recognition. We did something here. Something real. That evening, I'm packing my office materials when there's a knock. I look up to find Rourke standing in the doorway. Colonel, do you have a minute? I gesture to the chair across from my desk. He sits, looking uncomfortable. I wanted to say something, he begins. Not an apology, I think we're past that. Just an observation. I wait. Watching you work this week, seeing you lead those discussions, the respect everyone has for you, it made me realize something. 10 years ago, I didn't just dismiss a qualified officer. I dismissed you. Specifically. Your experience, your record, your expertise. And in doing so, I missed the opportunity to learn from one of the best. He pauses, gathering his thoughts. I spent years thinking that moment was about gender. About integration. About changing military culture. And it was all those things. But it was also simpler than that. It was about me being a bad officer. Making assumptions. Letting ego override judgment. Being so convinced of my own expertise that I couldn't recognize someone else's. I lean back in my chair. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know I understand now. Really understand. Not just intellectually, but operationally. You weren't right because you were a woman proving herself. You were right because you were a better officer. Period. I know that, I say simply. He almost smiles. Yeah, you do. You always did. Silence settles. But it's different now. Less weighted. I've been working with a SEAL team that's integrating female operators, he continues. Young women, mid-20s, scary competent. And I see the male officers watching them the way I watched you, with skepticism, doubt, low-key hostility. And every time I see it, I think about that TOC. About my face going white when you said Valkyrie 0. About how stupid I was. And I prompt. And I shut it down. Every time. I tell them the story. Not to embarrass myself, though it does, but to show them what bias costs. What assumptions risk. I use myself as the cautionary tale. That's good, I say. And I mean it. Is it enough? I consider the question carefully. Captain, enough is a moving target. You can't undo the past. Can't retroactively respect me 10 years ago. But you can influence the present. Shape the future. Make sure the next generation of officers doesn't inherit your mistakes. That's what I'm trying to do. I know. And it matters. He nods, looking relieved. Not absolved, but acknowledged. One more thing, he says. The mountain extraction. The one where I didn't know you were the pilot. I've read the classified report a dozen times. Studied the flight data. Talked to the men you saved. And I don't think I ever properly thanked you. Not just for the mission. For staying. For not pulling back when command ordered it. For risking your life for my men when I wasn't there to do it myself. His voice cracks slightly on the last part. Old guilt, never quite resolved. You don't need to thank me, I say. That's the job. Still. Thank you. I nod. Accept it. You're welcome. He stands, extends his hand again. This time, the handshake feels different. Not quite friendship. Not quite forgiveness. But something like mutual understanding. Good luck, Colonel. With whatever comes next. You too, Captain. He leaves. I finish packing. And I realize that closure isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just two people, 10 years later, finally on the same page about what happened and why it mattered. That's enough. 6 months later, the Joint Chiefs approve 18 of our recommendations. Not the sweeping overhaul we hoped for, but 18 real, actionable changes that will shape policy for the next decade. Mandatory integrated assignments for field-grade officers. Enhanced leadership evaluation criteria. Revised training protocols emphasizing operational effectiveness. Expanded mentorship programs. Better data collection on retention and performance. It's not everything, but it's something. I'm in my Pentagon office when the email arrives, official notification of the board's success and a commendation for my leadership role. General Kern's note is attached. Your voice mattered. Your experience mattered. Thank you for fighting this fight. I forward the email to Captain Sarah Voss, now Major Voss, leading an integrated fighter squadron in South Korea. Then to Lieutenant Colonel Kira Lawton, running intelligence operations in the Middle East. Then to Chief Master Sergeant Tali Moreno, overseeing aviation training at Lackland. The subject line is simple, progress. Because that's what this is. Not victory. Not completion. Progress. The mission continues. It always does. That evening, I'm having dinner with my husband, a quiet civilian who's tolerated 2 decades of deployments, classified absences, and military life with patient grace, when my phone buzzes. Text message from an unknown number. Colonel Holt. This is Mason Rourke. Just saw the news about the JSOC recommendations. Congratulations. You changed policy. You changed minds. You changed the force. That matters. MR, I stare at the message for a long moment. Then I type a brief response. Thank you. We changed the force. It took all of us. I almost don't send it. Almost delete the we. Because it wasn't all of us. It was women fighting uphill battles while men slowly, grudgingly, accepted what should have been obvious from the start. But then I remember the young SEAL officers Rourke's training. The integration work he's doing. The cautionary tale he's become. And I remember that progress requires people to change. To evolve. To become better than they were. So I send the message. Not as absolution. As acknowledgement. Because the mission isn't about punishing the past. It's about building the future. 10 years is a long time. Long enough for careers to transform. For biases to crumble. For institutions to evolve. Long enough for a humiliated Navy captain to become a voice for change. For a dismissed Air Force pilot to become a Pentagon colonel shaping policy for the next generation. Long enough for Valkyrie Zero to become not just a call sign, but a symbol. A reminder. A standard. I still fly when I can. Still feel most myself in a cockpit, hands-on controls, mission clock ticking. But my battlefield is bigger now. Policy rooms and conference tables and advisory boards where the decisions made today shape opportunities for decades. Sometimes I think about that moment in the TOC. Rourke's laugh. His dismissal. His face going white when I said my call sign. It was a small moment in a long career. But it mattered. Not because of revenge. Not because of vindication. Because it forced a reckoning. Drew a line. Established a standard that said this is unacceptable. And that line held. 10 years later, women are flying combat missions that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. Leading SEAL teams, running special operations task forces, commanding integrated units where capability matters more than gender. It's not perfect. We're not done. There are still battles to fight, barriers to break, biases to confront. But we're winning. Slowly. Steadily. Mission by mission. And when I mentor young officers now, women and men both, I tell them what I learned in that TOC a decade ago. Competence matters. Consistency matters. Showing up matters. Don't demand respect. Earn it. Not through theatrics or confrontation, but through quiet, relentless excellence. And when someone tries to reduce you to their assumptions, when they laugh, when they dismiss, when they minimize, you don't need to shout. Don't need to rage. You just need to stand. State your name. Say your call sign. And let your record do the rest. Because the truth always wins. Eventually. And justice, real justice, looks like doors opening for the people behind you. Like standards holding. Like missions succeeding because the best people are in the right positions regardless of who they are or what they look like. That's the legacy. That's the win. That's what matters. I'm Colonel Arden Holt. Call sign, Valkyrie 0. And the mission continues. 20 years later, I'm standing in front of 200 Air Force cadets at the academy, and I can barely recognize the woman I was when this story began. I'm 59 now. Brigadier General, 1 star. The promotion came 3 years ago, putting me in a tier I never imagined reaching when I was a second lieutenant learning to fly. My hair's more silver than brown, cut regulation short. The lines around my eyes are deeper, earned through decades of squinting at horizons and reading classified briefings under fluorescent lights. I retired from active flying 5 years ago, the hardest decision I ever made, but I still dream in altitude and airspeed. The auditorium is packed. Fresh faces, 18 to 22 years old, representing a generation that never knew a military without integrated combat roles. For them, women flying fighters isn't remarkable. It's normal. Expected. The way it always should have been. I'm here because the superintendent asked me to speak at the annual Leadership and Ethics Symposium. The topic, institutional change and individual accountability. They want me to tell the story. The one that's become legend in certain circles. The SEAL captain who dismissed the wrong pilot. I've told versions of it before. At staff colleges. Command courses. Advisory boards. But standing here, looking at these young faces, I realize the story means something different now. It's not about me anymore. It's about what came after. I step to the podium. The room quiets. 20 years ago, I begin. A Navy captain publicly dismissed me based on an assumption about gender and capability. He laughed when I stood up to brief a combat mission. Told me women don't fly combat. Asked for my call sign expecting something he could mock. I pause. Let them absorb it. When I answered Valkyrie 0, his face went white. Because he suddenly realized I was the pilot who'd saved his men 2 years earlier. The one who flew into a mountain extraction everyone else said was impossible. I see recognition in their eyes. Some have heard the story. Others are hearing it for the first time. That moment changed my career. Changed his career. And over the past 20 years, it's changed how we think about integration, bias, and mission effectiveness. I click to the first slide. It's a photo from 2015. The Joint Operations Center. Grainy, classified until 3 years ago. You can see the moment, Rourke's expression mid-transition from mockery to recognition. I want to tell you what happened after. Because the story doesn't end with vindication. It ends with evolution. For the next 40 minutes, I walk them through the timeline. The immediate fallout. The reassignment. The policy changes. The JSOC Advisory Board 10 years later where Rourke and I sat in the same room, professional but distant. Then I get to the part most people don't know. 15 years after that incident, Captain Rourke, by then retired, was running integration training for SEAL teams. He'd become one of the military's most effective voices on eliminating operational bias. Not because he was forced to, because he'd genuinely evolved. I clicked to another slide. It's a news article from 5 years ago. Former SEAL officer designs bias reduction training protocol adopted by Special Operations Command. He used himself as the case study. Told his story, our story, to thousands of officers. Showed them what assumptions cost. What dismissal risks. He became the cautionary tale, willingly, because he understood that his failure could prevent others from making the same mistakes. A cadet raises her hand. I nod. Ma'am, did you ever forgive him? I consider the question. I've been asked it dozens of times. Forgiveness implies a debt that needs clearing. What Captain Rourke did required accountability, not forgiveness. He was held accountable. He did better. That's how the system should work. Another hand. A young man this time. But did you ever reconcile? Personally, we became professional colleagues. We worked together on policy initiatives. We respected each other's expertise. But we were never friends. And that's okay. Not every story ends in friendship. Some end in mutual understanding and separate paths forward. I advance the slide. It shows statistics, retention rates, performance metrics, promotion timelines for women in combat roles over the past 20 years. The trajectory is upward. Not perfect. Not equal yet. But undeniably better. The point isn't individual redemption. It's institutional progress. One officer's evolution contributed to systemic change that's benefited thousands of service members. After the presentation, cadets cluster around with questions. Most want career advice. Some want to hear more details about the mountain extraction. A few want to know how I dealt with doubt, discrimination, the constant pressure to prove myself. I answer honestly. Tell them it never gets easy, just familiar. That competence is your best defense. That boundaries matter as much as performance. One cadet, a young woman with sharp eyes and a firm handshake, waits until the others disperse. General Holt, ma'am. I'm Cadet First Class Morgan Sharp. I'm commissioning into aviation next year. Sharp. The name registers. Any relation to Lieutenant Evan Sharp? Navy? She nods. My uncle. He was Captain Rourke's XO during that deployment. Small military world. He told me about that day, she continues. Said it was the most uncomfortable he'd ever been in a TOC. Said he knew Captain Rourke was wrong, but didn't know how to intervene without undermining his commander. A common dilemma, I say. He said watching you handle it, staying calm, staying professional, then filing the report, taught him more about leadership than his entire O course. I smile slightly. Your uncle became a good officer. Made commander, if I remember correctly. Yes, ma'am. He retired 2 years ago. He wanted me to tell you something if I ever met you. Go ahead. He said to say thank you. For showing him that real leadership isn't about protecting egos. It's about protecting the mission. I nod slowly. Tell him he's welcome. She hesitates. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I may not answer. Do you ever wish it hadn't happened? That moment with Captain Rourke? It must have been humiliating. Painful. I consider the question carefully. No, I say finally. Because that moment, as difficult as it was, became a catalyst. It forced conversations that needed to happen. It changed policy. It changed careers. And it reminded everyone watching that competence doesn't require permission to exist. But it cost you, she presses. Emotionally. Professionally, at least short term. Yes, it did. But some costs are worth paying. And some fights are worth having. She nods, absorbing this. I hope I have your courage if I face something similar. You won't need courage, I tell her. You'll just need clarity. Know your worth. Know your capability. And when someone tries to diminish it, don't argue. Just prove them wrong. That evening, I'm in my quarters reviewing emails when I see a message from an address I haven't seen in over a decade. Subject, thank you. Sender, Mason Rourke. I almost delete it unread. Then curiosity wins. General Holt, I heard you spoke at the Academy today about institutional change. My niece was in attendance, Morgan Sharp. Her father is my wife's brother, and yes, relation to my former XO. She said your presentation was exceptional. More importantly, she said you told our story with fairness and accuracy. That means more than I can express. I know we haven't spoken in years. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know that the work you've done, the policy changes, the mentorship, the leadership, has mattered beyond measure. Thank you for fighting the fight. Thank you for staying steady when others didn't expect you to. And thank you for giving people like me the opportunity to become better. Respectfully, Mason Rourke. I read it twice. Then I write a brief response. Captain Rourke, your niece is an impressive young officer. She'll do well. The work continues. We all have a role to play in making it better. B.G. Holt. Short. Professional. True. I send it and close my laptop. 20 years is long enough to see the full arc of change. Long enough to watch the impossible become routine. Long enough to see the women I mentored become mentors themselves. Sarah Voss is a colonel now, commanding an entire wing. Kira Lawton retired at 06 and runs a security consulting firm. Tali Moreno became the first female chief master sergeant of a special operations squadron. And across the force, hundreds of women are flying, fighting, leading not as exceptions but as expected. The battles aren't over. There are still barriers, still bias, still moments where women have to prove themselves twice to be seen once. But the trajectory is clear. The progress is real. And when I look back at that moment in the TOC Rourke's laugh, my calm response, the silence that followed, I see it differently now. It wasn't just about putting one biased officer in his place. It was about establishing a precedent. Drawing a line. Showing everyone watching that dismissal has consequences and competence has worth. That moment rippled outward. Influenced policy. Changed culture. Shaped careers. Not because I was special. Because I refused to be invisible. 20 years later, the call sign Valkyrie 0 still carries weight. Not as my identifier, I'm a general now, beyond call signs, but as a symbol. A reminder that we earn our place through performance, not permission. And when young officers ask me what I'm most proud of, I don't talk about the mountain extraction or the successful missions or the promotions. I talk about the doors that are open now. The opportunities that exist. The women flying combat missions who never had to fight the battles I fought. That's the legacy. That's the win. That's what matters. I'm Brigadier General Arden Holt. Former call sign, Valkyrie 0. The mission continues. And every day, it gets a little easier for the people coming behind me. That's enough. That's everything. That's how it went down. The moment a room full of operators learned exactly who I was, and the moment I stopped letting anyone decide my worth for me. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone underestimate you until the truth came out? Did you walk away, or did you prove them wrong? Drop your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone else draw their own line. And if this hit home, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. More real stories about boundaries, respect, and earning your place are coming soon.